Here is one of the strangest facts in all of ancient history. In the Roman world, being rich could be more dangerous to your health than being poor. In certain times and places in the Roman Empire, the wealthy elite, the people with the finest houses, the best food, the most leisure, and the most servants, may have suffered worse health and shorter lives than some of the laborers and slaves who served them. It sounds impossible. Wealth, in almost every society in history, buys longer life. The rich eat better, live safer, and die older. That is the iron rule of human inequality. And yet in Rome, a cluster of factors conspired to poison the powerful in ways that the poor were sometimes spared. Today, we are going to investigate one of the great hidden killers of the ancient world, the silent poison that flowed through the veins of Roman luxury itself. The reason the rich died young will surprise you, and it was hiding in their wine, their water, their cosmetics, and their food. Using advanced AI trained on the chemical analysis of ancient Roman bones and teeth, the study of lead levels in ancient Roman remains, and in the ice cores that recorded Roman industrial pollution, the surviving Roman texts on cooking, medicine, and engineering, and the work of modern archaeologists and toxicologists, we have reconstructed how the Roman elite were, in a very real sense, poisoning themselves with their own wealth. Let us begin with the substance at the center of the mystery, a soft, heavy, grey metal that the Romans loved, used everywhere, and did not understand. Lead. The Romans were obsessed with lead, and for good practical reasons. Lead is soft, easy to work, resistant to corrosion, and was produced in enormous quantities as a byproduct of the silver mining that fueled the Roman economy. The Romans had so much lead, and it was so useful that they used it for almost everything. Most famously, they used it for their plumbing. The very word plumbing comes from the Latin word for lead, plumbum, which is also why the chemical symbol for lead, to this day, is the letters P and B. The Romans built the most sophisticated water supply system in the ancient world, with their famous aqueducts carrying fresh water for miles into their cities, and from the public distribution points, the water often flowed into wealthy homes through pipes made of lead. A wealthy Roman with running water piped directly into his home, the ultimate luxury of the age, was drinking water that had passed through lead pipes. The poor, who hauled their water by hand from public fountains and stored it in pottery jars, were in some cases drinking water that had touched far less lead. But the plumbing was, surprisingly, probably not the worst of it. Roman water, in many cities, was so hard and so full of dissolved minerals that the inside of the lead pipes quickly became coated with a layer of mineral scale, which actually reduced the amount of lead leaching into the constantly flowing water. The real danger lay elsewhere, in something the Romans ate and drank every single day, and which the wealthy consumed in the greatest quantities of all. The hidden killer was a sweet syrup the Romans called Sapa, or Defrutum. The Romans loved sweetness, but they had no sugar. Cane sugar was a rare and exotic import they barely knew. Their main sweetener was honey, which was expensive, and grape syrup, which they made by boiling down grape juice or wine into a thick, sweet concentrate. And here is the catastrophe. The Romans discovered that if you boiled this grape syrup in a pot made of lead, or lined with lead, rather than in a pot of copper or bronze, the result was sweeter, and it kept better, and it had a particularly pleasant flavor. The reason is now understood by chemistry. The acid in the grape juice reacted with the lid of the pot to form a compound called lead acetate, which is intensely sweet to the taste. In fact, lead acetate has been known throughout history as sugar of lead precisely because of its sweetness. The Romans were, in effect, deliberately manufacturing a lead-laced sweet syrup, and they were adding it to everything. They poured this lead syrup into their wine to sweeten it and preserve it. They added it to sauces and to preserved fruits. They used it in cooking of all kinds. A surviving Roman cookbook is full of recipes that call for this kind of reduced grape syrup. And the wealthy, who drank the most wine, who ate the most elaborate and sweetened food, who consumed the richest sauces and the finest preserved delicacies, were dosing themselves with lead at every banquet. Some modern estimates have suggested that a member of the Roman aristocracy, drinking several cups of sweetened wine a day, could have been consuming a quantity of lead that we now know to be seriously toxic, day after day, year after year, for an entire lifetime. And the wine was not the end of it. The Roman elite surrounded themselves with lead in ways the poor could never afford. Wealthy Romans ate and drank from beautiful vessels of pewter, a metal alloy that often contained a high proportion of lead, and from glazed pottery whose glazes could contain lead. They used cosmetics made with lead. A white face was a mark of aristocratic beauty, a sign that you did not have to labor in the sun like a peasant, and one of the most prized white cosmetics of the ancient world was made from lead, a white powder that women and some men applied to their faces to achieve a pale, fashionable complexion. They used lead-based pigments to paint their walls. They stored food and wine in lead-lined containers. The wealthier you were, the more refined your lifestyle, the more lead you touched, ate, drank, and wore. The poorest Romans, eating plain bread and pottage from rough clay bowls, drinking water from public fountains, wearing no cosmetics, lived, in this one respect, more cleanly than their masters. The effects of chronic lead poisoning are, by modern medical understanding, devastating, and they are exactly the kind of slow, mysterious decline that would have baffled Roman physicians. Lead accumulates in the body over time, building up in the bones and the organs, and it never fully leaves. Chronic lead exposure causes a wide range of terrible effects. It damages the nervous system, causing headaches, irritability, confusion, memory problems, and in severe cases, seizures, madness, and death. It damages the kidneys. It causes gout, the painful joint disease that was so common among the wealthy of many historical eras that it was nicknamed the disease of kings. It causes anemia, fatigue, and abdominal pain. And, perhaps most chillingly, it is a reproductive poison. Lead causes infertility, miscarriage, stillbirth, and birth defects, and it is especially damaging to the developing brains of children. A wealthy Roman family consuming lead at every meal might have suffered higher rates of stillbirth, infertility, mental decline, and early death than a poor family eating plainer food, even though the poor family endured hunger, hard labor, and squalor that the rich never knew. Some historians have even speculated, more controversially, that lead poisoning among the Roman ruling class may have contributed to the famous instability, erratic behavior, and apparent madness of certain Roman emperors and aristocrats. The wild cruelty, paranoia, and seemingly insane decisions attributed to some emperors have been linked by a few researchers to the cognitive effects of a lifetime of lead exposure, beginning even in the womb. This idea remains debated, and most historians caution against blaming the fall of Rome on lead, as some dramatic theories have done, since the empire lasted for centuries and the population as a whole was not wiped out by lead poisoning. But the basic chemistry is not in doubt. The Roman elite consumed dangerous quantities of lead, and the wealthier they were, the more they consumed. We must be careful and honest here, though, because the full picture is more complicated than a simple reversal. On average, across the whole Roman population, the rich still had real advantages. They ate more reliably, they were less likely to starve in famines, they lived in better housing, and they had access to such medical care as existed. The poor and the enslaved faced brutal labor, malnutrition, violence, and a host of infectious diseases that killed them in large numbers, especially in the crowded, filthy slums of the great cities, where sanitation was poor and epidemics swept through regularly. Roman life expectancy at birth, for everyone, rich and poor alike, was low by modern standards, dragged down enormously by appalling rates of infant and child mortality. So it is not quite true to say that all rich Romans simply died younger than all poor Romans. But the striking, counterintuitive truth remains. In the specific matter of slow chemical poisoning, the Roman elite poisoned themselves with their own luxury in a way that the poor were partly spared. The very things that marked you as wealthy and refined, the sweet wine, the white cosmetics, the piped water, the elaborate sauces, the fine vessels, were quietly killing you. That was the hidden poison at the heart of Roman wealth. A civilization that loved a soft grey metal so much that it built that metal into its plumbing, its cooking, its cosmetics, its tableware, and its beloved sweet wine, without ever understanding that it was slowly poisoning its own ruling class, generation after generation. The Romans were brilliant engineers, conquerors, lawgivers, and builders, but they did not understand toxicology, and so The price of their luxury was paid in headaches and gout and madness and dead infants in the finest houses of the empire. Lead poisoning did not destroy Rome, but it haunted the lives of the Romans who had everything in ways they could never have understood. And it leaves us with one of history's great dark ironies. In the richest society of the ancient world, the cup of sweet wine raised in the marble villa of a senator may have carried a slow death that the water jug of his lowliest slave did not. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room is the luxury everyone is fighting to obtain. See the Iliad story in the Paladin app, out now.